Hi, everybody. This is Marc Summers, and today I'm going to be talking to the great Gabriel Iglesias, a.k.a. Fluffy. We're going to discuss his early cartoon sex jokes.
I was doing like Marvin the Martian, like he was having like
oh my modulator, oh.
His recent reunion with his dad.
I found out that I have siblings. I have two sisters from him.
That you didn't know about.
That I didn't know about.
And the hard journey of a comic that comes before doing epic stuff like playing Dodger Stadium.
I mean, I performed inside of swimming pools. I performed off the back of pickup trucks. I performed in backyards, front yards, living rooms. I want to say that the only reason why I had such a good attitude about it at the time was because I didn't know they were bad gigs.
Don't forget to like and subscribe to Marc Summers Unwraps.
Fluffy is from Southern California.
Yep.
Los Angeles.
Yep.
Is the city where it's hard for the Dodgers to get people to fill Dodger Stadium.
Isn't that the truth?
And yet he did it.
He did it. He sold the place out, which is remarkable when you think about it. And when he talks about doing over 3 hours of material, I remember trying to remember 20 minutes of material. Now, he's been doing it a long time, but, you know, you feel the crowd, and it is a surreal experience when you walk out, I would imagine, to a crowd that big. I never have, but I can only imagine. And he's just the nicest guy in the world. You know, I've spent a little time with him, not much, more today than any other time. And he's as nice as you could imagine him to be. And there's a likability factor there that you either have or you don't. And boy, he has it big time.
Well, it's almost magic then that he's holding on to the attention of so many people to be so likable on that grand scale.
Yep.
He talks about keeping it clean, which he didn't always do. But you yourself have talked about the importance, or there's being a certain coming of age of going clean?
Yeah.
Can you speak about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, you go back to Lenny Bruce, who was the first one who really broke through boundaries, but didn't really. When you go back and listen to that material, it was really George Carlin who opened up the door in that. And when I was working at the Comedy Store, the Improv, or one of those places, if you were dying, it was real easy to get a laugh by, you know, as we used to say, going blue, saying the word, the F word, or, you know, telling an off-color joke. It would always get a laugh, but where are you going to go with that? I mean, the ultimate goal back in the day was to do 6 minutes on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, and you knew you could never do that kind of material. And when the folks from The Tonight Show would come in and see you, the minute you opened with a dirty joke, they left, because they knew there's nothing they could do with you on The Tonight Show. So Gabe was very smart to realize that the future was in being clean and being himself. And, man, he's made a hell of a career out of it.
He has. And we've also talked on this show, though, about doing the Robin Williams School of Comedy, saying whatever comes out of your mouth, not worrying about the impact.
Yep.
What do you think is most valuable?
Well, very few people could do that. I mean, Robin pulled it off magically. And, you know, when you try to think of more people who have magically done that, I can't think of really anybody. Robin was the king of that. You know, George Carlin was the king of doing cerebral, philosophical, gee, scratch my head kind of humor. And when we talked to Gabe, I compared him to two old school comedians, Alan King and Danny Thomas, who would get up and tell a 20-minute story that included very funny things within it, but didn't tell jokes. And I don't think anybody else other than Gabe is getting up and doing that. So he's got a market, a corner of the market captured. And it's interesting to me that nobody else has sort of caught on to that and tried to emulate him.
Yeah, certain kind of magic. It's like a very long TED Talk, but where people are laughing, too.
What a great comparison. You're absolutely right. Yeah, you're right.
For so long, when you were doing magic, we weren't doing 3-hour shows, but it would be so important that you kept people's attention.
Yeah. And you're right. You would do, 12 to 20 minutes, which when you're standing on stage seems forever sometimes. Other days it flies by. And I wonder, I should have asked him, when you're on stage for 3 hours at Dodger Stadium, did it seem like it was just like, snapping your fingers, or did it seem like 3 hours to you? And the pressure, because, my wife pretty much never came to any of the shows I would do, because she said it made me nervous, and it did, and I never performed as well when she was in the room. I guess he's comfortable enough to have all his cronies there. I never got to that point, so I admire him for doing that as well.
Wait, so quick follow-up then, though. You would be out doing the shows, your wife wasn't there, so he did speak of the disconnect, the home life versus the work life.
Yep.
Did you find that challenging?
Well, the word sacrifice came up towards the end of our interview, and you make choices, okay? And my wife never wanted anything to do with the entertainment business. She grew up in Los Angeles, but it meant nothing to her. And so that was my passion. And she never enjoyed being backstage or hanging out. I remember I opened, at the Santa Monica Civic for the Bay City Rollers. She dropped me off and then came back and picked me up. She didn't want to stay for the show. I'm trying to think if there's anything that she came to see me. She'd come to the Comedy Store, never enjoyed it. Magic Castle, never really enjoyed it. She always thought magicians were weird, and they are. I'd have to call Alice and ask her if there was ever a performance that she came to see me do that, sort of blew her head off. She married me because of who I am, not because of, potentially I was going to be, well-known or famous or whatever. And I guess that's part of the reason it's all worked. And I always say I've been married 48 years, but I've only been home 14 of them. And, I think that also adds to the mystery of keeping a marriage together as well. Very excited to have fluffy Gabriel Iglesias with our program today. When I tell people who's going to be on the show within the family, they usually don't get too excited, but everybody got excited, the fact that we got you. And this show is about overcoming obstacles. Let me tell you the obstacle I had to overcome to get you here. Do you know the process of how protected you are? Do you have any idea?
I have an idea of how protected I am. That's funny.
So I have a friend who works over at Levity on the TV side, and he gave me a number of a manager who gave me passed off to another agent or manager who got me passed off to a publicist. And when I finally got a hold of the publicist, first they said yes, and then they said, Gabe's not doing that stuff anymore. Get back to us. And then they played the game of how do we know you're really Marc Summers? And so I had to send a direct message from my Twitter account because I had the blue check mark to make sure it really was me. I said, why don't you just call me? And so you are well protected, my friend, and I'm so glad that you are here. We have so many things to talk about.
But how do they know you didn't buy the blue check? Because now you can buy the blue check.
Well, now you can. But a couple of weeks ago when we tried to do this, a couple of months ago, it wasn't that easy, man, let me tell you. First of all, I owe you an apology because about 4 years ago, you were nice enough to come on the reboot of Double Dare, and there just happened to be a pie there. And I looked at the pie, and I looked at you, and I hit you in the face with the pie, and you were very sweet about it. So I hope you had another pair of clothes to leave the studio that day, or did you go home with pie?
Oh, no, not at all, man. But I got a pie to the face from you. So that was, in some weird way, I think I lived out a childhood fantasy with that one right there.
See,
so
I love hearing that.
I was good. I was very happy with it.
Did you go up watching Double Dare?
Yes, I did.
So
that was always like, wow, man. That was back when I was always like, yeah, take the physical challenge. I was always all about the physical challenge. But I'm 46 now, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to answer those questions.
yeah.
I'm going to Google, and I'm going to get those questions right.
That used to be the thing. Kids used to say to me, I wanted to be on the show, but my parents didn't want to get messy. So, there were a lot of disappointed kids back in the day because the parents didn't want to get slimed. But those that did have a lifelong memory, and I'm glad that we got to do that with you on the show. So
I loved how it was always like the bluff game. Like, it was the bluff. Like you're talking to each other like, we got this question. I bet you they're stupid, right? And then you're like dare. And
it's so true.
And then you could see like, oh, shoot. Okay.
I have copious notes here on you. There's so many things I want to talk about. First of all, whether you know it or not, and I always bring this up in these shows, that I started off doing stand-up. I became a regular at the store in 1976. So my roots are in somewhat your roots. And I want to talk to you about how did you form this type of comedy you do? Because what you do is unique. What you do, nobody else does. If you go back, I'm going to mention names that may mean nothing to you. Alan King, does that mean anything to you?
Alan King. I know who Alan King is.
Okay. Danny Thomas?
Danny Thomas, yes.
They used to tell stories. They didn't tell jokes. You don't tell jokes, in my opinion. You tell really funny stories that have jokes throughout them. How did you come up with this concept? Because nobody has done it in 25 years, and other than you, I can't think of anybody else who is doing it.
When I first started doing stand-up, it was just impressions, characters. I was super dirty.
Were you really?
Yes, I was very blue. I was just doing cartoons having sex. That was my whole act in the beginning. But you got to figure, I was performing most of the time inside of bars. Dive bars, to be exact. I mean, like really seedy places. And so it worked perfectly in those situations. And what's funny is that I wound up meeting a comic by the name of Joey Medina who told me, he says, hey, listen, man, you're really funny. You're going up there. You're very likable. He goes, if you cut out the cuss words, you're still going to be funny. and you're going to be able to play wherever you want. And I go, well, what are you talking about? He goes, trust me, you're going to get opportunities down the line, and most of the time comics have to edit their sets. He goes, if you work clean now, cut out the F-bombs and just focus on being funny, he goes, you're going to be ready when those phone calls come in. And it was the best advice I ever got. And so once I started doing that, it took me a while before I got comfortable enough to actually share personal things about myself on stage. And so once I did, I'm like, well, let me just do what I did in high school, because when I was in high school, I took a speech class, and what I would do is every day I'd go in front of the class because the teacher would give you extra credit for speaking in front of class. And it didn't matter what you talked about. So I would just go up there and I would talk about my day, talk about what happened at home. I'm like, yeah, so I get home, my mom was like, ¿Dónde andabas? ¿Qué andabas haciendo? And people would laugh because I'm doing impressions of my mom and I'm telling a story. And that's what it was, is I was just sharing stories. And so the more experiences I had, the more stories I had. And so I would just start taking those stories to the stage, because that was easier than just trying to be comic doing voices and characters having sex with each other, you know?
What cartoons were having sex back in the day?
Oh, man, I was doing like Marvin the Martian, like he was having like
Oh my modulator. Oh,
yeah. And it's like, it's still funny, but you couldn't do that on Nickelodeon back in the day. And the irony was that, eventually I got picked up by Nickelodeon.
Yes.
Which I think is funny. We're both two former Nickelodeon employees.
You were doing all that, right?
Yes, I did all that for a season.
And was that fun for you?
It was, because it was something different, and I could not believe the amount of attention I was getting, and not to mention the fact that it took me from, I was making, I don't know, $50 to $80 a week trying to do stand-up, and now I was paying for cars. Like
doing
literally, just from Nickelodeon.
Yeah. Yeah, you got in at a good time.
I got in at a really good time.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it was only for one season, but at least I had a nice run.
Did you ever do the Comedy Store or the Improv or any of those? I don't remember you back in those clubs.
I did. It's just that I didn't get. I call it the cliques. Like, the Comedy Store always had cliques. There was cliques. There was like either the Joe Rogan clique or the Andrew Dice Clay clique or the Eddie Griffin clique. There was all these different cliques of comics that had their little core groups. And so whenever I would go there, I would just pop in from time to time. But I am a regular, and I want to say that my little old, 20-some-odd-year-old headshot is still in the main lobby. Me wearing braces and stuff, but if I still pop in right now, I'm pretty sure I could go up.
Now you can, trust me.
But it was one of those. I wasn't a regular because I was already going on the road.
Is your name on the side of the building?
Yes, it is.
See, that was a turning point for me. I knew that I had made it when my name. And about once a year, I still drive by and make sure it's still there. There's just something about that club from back in the day. But you're right. There were those cliques when I was there. It was Letterman and Leno.
See, it's always
And could you break through? And at least to get accepted. Back in the day, we used to go after the shows were over with at like 1 o'clock in the morning. We would go to this
Carney's.
No, we would go to. Well, we spent a lot of time at Carney's there on the Sunset Strip, but a place called Theodore's, which was on Santa Monica Boulevard, and then we'd go to Cantor's, and you'd sit there till like 3 o'clock in the morning.
I remember Cantor's.
It was just the best, because I would sit there with a guy by the name of Johnny Yoon, Johnny Dark, Leno, Letterman. I'm just trying to think of all these guys that, Tom Dreesen. And you would sit back and listen to these stories because they were opening for people back then. That was the goal. See, before Vegas got screwed up and they put Cirque du Soleil in every room, Steve and Edie and all these people would, be there, and your job would be to open for one of these acts. And, that was like the best gig in the world. Did you open for people?
I got a chance to open up for a couple of people early on, but I mean, I was very lucky that I was able to get on the road very quickly.
Were you?
I got in, I emceed for about a year, and so I became a middle after about 8 months. And then, then it went from there. So, but as far as like musical acts, I mean, J.J. Jackson. I remember opening for J.J. Jackson on New Year's.
Wow.
That was the first time I bombed in front of a lot of people.
That must have been a very tough gig, right?
It was a very tough gig because I went out there, I put on a suit, and they basically put me out there while everybody was still getting their food, and no one was really sitting down and paying attention yet, and I had to just go up there and, all right, this is what I do. And I only had maybe 15 minutes of time to my name, and I had to stretch it to like 20, and it was horrible. It was horrible. I made so much money that day. I was so excited. I made I was excited. I made $1,000. I'm like, oh my God, I've never seen $1,000.
Died and gone to heaven, right?
Yeah. But then it's like, I felt like I earned it because I bombed so bad. And I felt it was so much mental pain and just like, wow. And then I went out and I watched J.J. Jackson perform,
I just remember the 3 dates stick on my mind. Once I got paid $2,500 to say, ladies and gentlemen, and ladies and gentlemen, Crystal Gale. That's all I had to do. I had to put on a tuxedo. It was downtown in some fancy hotel, and I walked on stage and said, ladies and gentlemen, Crystal Gale. And then I walked off stage, watched her perform. They handed me a check. That was like the best gig ever, okay?
That sounds like the best gig still.
Oh, my God. Mitzi once sent me downtown to the clothing mart. And there was a shoe convention. All these New York guys selling shoes meeting in Los Angeles, and she wanted me to do 20 minutes of stand-up for $300. $300 was like a fortune to me back then. I went, of course. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the comedy of Marc Summers. And they had no interest in listening to anything I said. And after about 5 minutes of them shouting out, I yelled, "Shut the fuck up!" Okay? And they stopped and looked at me. And then went back and kept talking. And I called Mitzi after the gig, and I said, "You're not going to pay me because this was miserable and all that kind of stuff." And she gave me the check, and she said, "No, they loved you." What did they love? I didn't do anything, But so that was a miserable gig, I remember. And once I got an opportunity to open for the Bay City Rollers, which at the time were like the hottest group, at the Santa Monica Civic Auditorium. And I was still doing magic then. I wasn't doing comedy. And ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the magic. I was still Mark Berkowitz then. Please welcome comedy and magic of Mark Berkowitz. And all I heard from a bunch of 12 and 13-year-old girls was, "Get the fuck off the stage," And, they paid me. They told me David Copperfield had opened for them in New York. And David had called me and said, "This is the hardest gig I've ever done in my entire life." And they said, "You've got to go out there and do 12 minutes. And if you don't do the full 12 minutes, we're not going to pay you." So I went out there and did, what I thought was an hour and a half. And I looked over and Steve Rissmiller, the promoter, looked at me and I still had 10 minutes to go. And then he'd show me 5 minutes and 4-3. Talking about sweating bullets. And so those are the early days that you remember and you go, man, I never hope I have to do that again. Fast forward the tape. We're going to talk about Dodger Stadium in a few minutes, but I mean, when you think about what you went through in the early days to sell out Dodger Stadium, what goes through your mind when you think about that?
The early gigs were the ones where I really just I just mentioned the one where I remember bombing really, really bad.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I don't think I've had too many situations like that. I've been pretty good about feeling comfortable, in certain situations. I mean, I performed inside of swimming pools. I performed off the back of pickup trucks. I performed in backyards, front yards, living rooms. I mean, you name it. Any I've done weddings.
Those are tough.
Good weddings, bad, yeah. And so I want to say that the only reason why I had such a good attitude about it at the time was because I didn't know they were bad gigs.
Yeah.
I just figured, these are people willing to listen to me do stand up, and I'm just happy to be working. And I had a really, really good attitude in the beginning. I feel now I'm like, Now I'm jaded. Now I feel like a vet who's been, you don't know about those gigs. You weren't there for that shit. This new generation and their YouTube videos, they don't understand the struggle.
I got called once to do a bar mitzvah to recreate Double Dare in Florida at some football stadium for $50,000, and I turned it down. Because I just thought to myself, there's no way this is going to work. This just can't be good. You're playing a football stadium, and people who have way too much money, the expectations are just so high. And I remember walking away from that gig. My wife thought I was out of my mind, but I knew that the end result was not going to be good.
No, it's a hoe gig. That's what they call them. It's a straight up hoe play. You're not doing it for the love of what you do.
No.
You're doing it for the paycheck. And I'm guilty of taking a few of those, but it's because the pay was so much of a I remember the struggle, and so I can't say no to some of these.
Yeah,
and it's really, really hard. But then you feel like like I said, like a whore. When you're done, you're like, I can't believe it. Let's go to the mall. Let's make it better. Let's go to the mall after this.
It's so different. When we brought Double Dare back in the day, you had to fight for money. I started there in 1986, and they paid me $500 an episode. I'd never made $2,500 a week on anything. So when we renegotiated the new deal, my head exploded when they told me how much money. And by the way, the first offer would have been fine, but of course we negotiated it up. And you think about the balance of when you first start versus what's today, but you've earned it. I would get upset sometimes with my agent and say, really, they're going to pay me that much money? He goes, they're not paying you for what you're doing now. They're paying you for all the time that you put in to get to this point.
Way to put that. Yeah.
You look at TV people and you look at movie stars and people on Broadway and you go, boy, those are the luckiest people in the world. And what they don't realize is how hard it is. Why do some people, when they hit the wall, climb over or go around the wall, but other people just walk away and go, I'm not doing this anymore? And you have that stick-to-itiveness that has made you what you are today. So let's go back and talk about growing up. Single family home, correct?
Yes, it was just my mom, no dad. My siblings were already grown up and out of the house.
Oh, now brothers and sisters, how many?
One brother, 4 sisters.
And where are they today?
Good question.
Not a close-knit family, huh?
No, not really. Not really. Ever since my mom passed away, I haven't really kept in touch with a whole lot of them. I think we all were putting our best foot forward to just try to maintain a certain level of being civil while my mom was around.
How long ago did your mom pass away?
10 years.
10 years. It must have been a tough one, huh? Never easy. Never easy. Yeah, I just lost mine as well. I know. I know what you're talking about. That. Did you know your dad?
Yeah, and actually, I had a reunion with him about 2 weeks ago.
Tell me about that.
It was about 15. The last time I saw him was about 15 years ago. My mom was still alive, and I reconnected with him in Mexico City. I had my first show ever in Mexico City, and I said, yeah, you know what? Let me have a twofer. And so I figured, big show. Let me go talk to the guy. And I had no ill will towards him. I mean, it's what am I going to complain about? Hey, how come you? I'm not going to say why weren't you there or what happened. I mean, I feel like I turned out fine.
Yeah.
If anything, I need some medical information, and I found out that I have siblings. I have 2 sisters from him
that you didn't know about.
That I didn't know about, and I have a couple nieces. So it's nice that I got a chance to meet everybody, and that was kind of like, all right, I think all of our expectations we were trying to manage and just be like, all right, let's just feel this out, see how this is gonna go, and I felt like it went really, really well. Again, there was no arguing, there was no fighting, there was no finger pointing, there wasn't, how come or whatever. It was just like, hey, well, hey, you're 80 years old now. I got, just want to say hi. Hope you're well.
Was that a tough call for you to make?
Not. It was a little bit awkward, but I had a couple family members that went with me, and they made it easy. And fortunately, my Spanish has gotten way better since the last time I saw him. Spanish TV and songs help. They do, because I didn't learn Spanish in school.
You did not?
No, I had to learn it just by talking to people and just hanging out and listening and getting yelled at. You get yelled at enough times, you pick up the words.
And when you were down in Mexico, you did the show in English then?
The show was in English, yes, but the conversations I had with my father and my sisters was all in Spanish.
All in Spanish. Wow. Interesting.
So, but yeah, it went well. Like I said, the last time I saw him was 15 years prior. My mom was still alive, and the goal was to try to get the 2 of them together so I could take a photo. And that was my thing. I was like, I never had a picture of my mom and my dad together, the 3 of us, and I would just like to have that photo. And so when I asked my dad back then, he goes, yeah, no, absolutely, no problem. And then I asked my mom, and my mom was just like, are you crazy? And I'm like, oh my God, Mom, it's just a quick photo. You don't even have to talk to him. I don't want to be. And like, it was serious.
So it didn't happen.
Yeah. And then when my mom passed away, I thought about reaching out to my dad, but then I'm like, you know what? I don't want to try to replace her. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't want to go from like one to another right away. I wanted to give it time.
Right.
And that time just happened to be 15 years.
Wow.
So.
And so you moved around a lot as a kid.
We moved around a lot in Southern California. So, like, for example, I started off in Chula Vista, San Diego. Then we lived in Baldwin Park, Riverside, Long Beach, Whittier, and I'm still in Long Beach. And at one point, I moved out and I moved to Whittier again, and I moved to Burbank. And I lived in Burbank because my manager at the time thought it was a good idea for me to live where Hollywood's at, and you can get to everywhere in your auditions. You're never going to be late, blah, blah, blah. And I think I had maybe 3 auditions and 1 Tonight Show appearance in that time. So it was kind of pointless to, move far away because I was still driving back home to see friends and family and stuff.
And so you moved around a lot because your mom was changing jobs, or what was the situation?
Well, you know what? That's a good question. We lived in a lot of different apartments growing up in Long Beach. We were under housing, HUD at the time. I don't know what it's called now. I'm pretty sure it's the same. And we were also under welfare. So we were welfare. It was the, what do you call it? The EBT card of its time. And in Section 8. And I remember we went to apply for that so that we could try to move into a better situation. And we did. It took some time. And the building is still there in Long Beach. And I got a chance to go visit the mayor of Long Beach at the time. And it was the same building where my mom and I went when I was a little kid to go apply to get this, to get approval for housing. And I just thought it was cool. I'm like, wow, I remember being here, and now I'm here to meet the mayor.
Wow.
So, yeah.
And so you were kind of a latchkey kid, I'm assuming. You came home from school.
Yes, and you know what? A lot of people don't know what that is. You mentioned what a latchkey kid is now. It sounds like abuse.
Yeah, but it's not.
But
Explain.
it's not. A latchkey kid back in the day when I remember being 10 years old, my mom got a piece of yarn, and she tied a key to it. And then she put the key around my neck, and it was my first form of jewelry. And basically, as soon as I was done at school, I'd take the bus back home. There was always a drop off. Then you'd walk home, and I would have to unlock the door, go inside, and lock the door. And basically, I babysat myself until my mom got back.
And so you'd make yourself something to eat and watch TV.
The rules was don't answer the door, don't answer the phone, unless there was a code for the phone. So like if my mom was going to call me, this is way before caller ID and all that. She would let the phone ring one time and then hang up and then call back again, and that was the code. So then when I picked it up the second time, I'm like, "Hey, Mom," and she's like, "Okay, good, you're doing what you're supposed to do." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do." And then of course, if someone came knocking, you stayed quiet, and then you weren't allowed to use the stove. So don't touch the stove. You can make yourself whatever you want. Just don't touch the stove.
So with that upbringing, what motivated you to where you are today?
Well, one of the times I was babysitting myself, my mom took me to the video store and I rented a couple of VHS tapes, which was the Netflix of its day.
Yep.
And I remember watching Eddie Murphy Raw.
Oh, did you? How old were you?
Oh God, I must have been 11. 10,
your
11.
head must have exploded.
It was like, wow, I had never heard language like that or just seen like anything like that. It was a lot. And I think that if my mom would have known what I was watching, she probably wouldn't have let me watch it.
No.
But, since it was like, here, babysit yourself, pick out some movies. And as long as you didn't have to walk behind the beads to get your videotape, you know what I mean?
I remember those days.
As long as you didn't have to walk behind the special wooden beads that were in the corner, if you could get your tape in the regular room, then it was okay, whatever it is. And so, I remember watching Eddie Murphy Raw, and I'm like, wow, he's doing these characters and voices and stories. And so it was everything that I was like, this is so awesome. And I was so drawn to it. And I wound up doing a school talent show about a month later. And I just went up there and I did impressions. And I was doing impressions of what I had seen Eddie Murphy do, minus the language. And
did you really?
Yeah, and I got in my first talent show that way.
So Eddie was your first influence in stand-up?
Eddie was my first influence. It was him and then Robin Williams once I started watching Robin Williams movies. Because I saw Robin Williams movies before I saw his stand-up.
Did you ever meet him?
I met Robin one time.
So we were at the store at the same time. The nicest man ever. He was being honored in New York once, and I was at the dinner, and he came out of the kitchen, and I mean, it was Walter Cronkite and
Wow.
Barbara Walters and all these people, and I said, when you walk into a room like this and see all these people here to honor you, what goes through your mind? And he said to me, well, look at your career. Look what you're doing. He always turned it around. He was always the nicest guy, the sweetest guy. So sad that he ended his life the way he did, but talk about a comedic influence. And in fact, let's talk about that for a second. When Letterman first started at the Comedy Store, nobody had ever seen anybody like David Letterman. And after he became successful, there were 10 clones. People thought they were as good as Dave, trying to do what Dave did. When Robin hit the scene, nobody had ever seen anything like that. And in 90 days, there were 15 versions of Robin. And once again, my point of view is there's already one of those people, and they're successful. If you're the clone of those people, the odds of becoming successful are slim and none. How did you come up with this no politics, no sports, your whole mantra about what you deliver? How did that develop?
I think that goes back to when I was told to be clean. Just don't rub people the wrong way. And I figure that, what divides people immediately. And that's, you'll see it when you go to bars. If you go to bars, well, depending on the bar, you'll see signs, no politics. Because people will drink and get into it at the bar, and it'll mess up everybody's vibe. And I feel like I don't follow politics enough to sound like I know what I'm talking about. Like, don't get me wrong, I understand the headlines and everything that's going on, but these people that are very detailed, they like the ins and outs, and they start knowing all the names of all the politicians and everyone who's doing XYZ. And I'm not, I do follow, but I don't need to put my opinion out there. People don't pay for that. They pay to come out, have a good time, smile, and leave feeling good, not feeling like, they're questioning their life. Should I do it? Should I not do it? Should I get the shot, not get the shot? Should we keep this baby or not keep the baby? That's not for me to do.
Right.
And so I made my mind up early on. Just talk about yourself, talk about your life, talk about things that everyone can relate to, and don't ruffle feathers.
I made that mistake. I was asked to be on Bill Maher's show once, and I to this day, I have a copy of it in my closet. It's been there for years. I cannot look at it. I bombed so bad because I was way out of my league. they're talking about politics and things in the world that I had no reason to be there for, and I crashed and burned. When you get done doing a show, you generally go up to the producer and say, "How did I do?" I remember walking to the producer, and he ran the other direction, so I knew that I had bombed so bad, man. It's unbelievable. So
and see, I like watching Bill Maher's show. I like watching any show that makes me laugh. That there's actual comedy involved in it, especially if a comedian's the host. Whether it's left, right, blue, red, whatever the case, I enjoy it. I remember, Dennis Miller. Dennis Miller's one that's all the way one way, and Bill Maher's for a while was all the way the other. But then you watch someone like Trevor. It's just like, okay. I would have liked to have been on one of those shows or all of those shows, but again, I don't want to get roped into the politics of it and then have people question why I'm there, because automatically you're guilty by association.
I know. I have lunch every Wednesday with Dennis Miller, and
he's awesome.
He's awesome. He's the smartest human I've ever met in my entire life. And I always tell him when I have lunch, I have to have a thesaurus, a dictionary, and an encyclopedia, because I have no idea what he's talking about. He makes these comparisons, and I have to go home and look all this stuff up. That's how smart this guy is.
Yeah.
It's insane. How'd you get into doing the impressions?
You know what?
And the sound effects.
When I was 10, I remember when I saw Eddie Murphy Raw, I started trying to mimic what he was doing. And I realized that for some reason, I was able to do the girl voice. That just came out of nowhere. I don't even know where I think that was puberty hitting, and then just mimicking. I'd hear a voice long enough and then I'd try to mimic it. And I think that's where they came from.
Didn't you do Speedy Gonzelz in...
Yes, I did.
Was that a ball? I mean, I don't think you can do Speedy Gonzelz anymore because everybody's so nuts.
Well, I mean, I still did it the way that it was supposed to be done, but that was a conversation because originally when we talked about doing the movie, they said, I think maybe we're going to, modernize the voice. And they said, well, how about we use your regular speaking voice? And I'm like, well, my regular speaking voice isn't really... it's in the vein, but I'm not speaking fast enough, and I think people are going to know. And I don't need people to know that it's me. I need people to know that it's Speedy.
Yeah. I think Mel Blanc did Speedy.
Mel Blanc did everything,
right?
And now there's a new guy named Eric, I want to say is Eric Bauza, I think is his name. I met him on one of these shows, and he does a lot of the characters.
Does he?
I can get close, but that guy is like dead on.
Scary, right?
Yeah.
It's amazing.
But for Speedy Gonzelz, I mean, come on, man.
Do a little Speedy for...
mira, amigo, Marc Summers. Arriba! Pandale! Yeah.
Did you have a ball doing that?
Oh, yeah, it was easy. It was so much fun. And I told him, too, I go, hey, if you guys want me to do any other characters, man, you can get it like a, 2 for 1, 3 for 1. Just
that's got to be so much fun.
Give me some swag, man. Give me some.
Well, it lasts forever too. That movie's going to be around forever. Your grandkids and your great grandkids are going to be watching that movie. Which I can
say I was part of the list of people that did it.
Yeah,
so
absolutely,
it's a big deal.
Talk to me about your time on Last Comic Standing.
Ooh, okay. Well, the show, I mean, I'm not letting any real secrets out. The show, there was a lot of politics on that show.
You think?
Yeah, there's a lot of politics. I don't think it really had much to do with competition. It was all who you know, what you do. Yeah, I wasn't supposed to do this show. They actually called me and see if I was interested.
Really?
They wanted me in the mix on that one, and I was like, well, I go, but I don't want. I'm in order to do that show, you had to wait in like a 6-hour line outside of whatever club was having the auditions. And when I'd see those lines, I'm like, I am not waiting. In a long ass line, because I'm already performing at the clubs at that point.
Yeah.
I'm already a headliner at that point.
Yeah,
and why am I going to do that? And they're like, well, we want to kind of mix it up a little bit and put a little bit more on the show. And so they said, okay, you can bypass the line and you go straight to producers or, whoever the head honchos were at the time, instead of going through all the channels. I basically got a fast pass. And so, of course, I do the show where there's a live audience. And with a live audience, I was killing it.
Yeah,
all I had to do was 3 minutes. And so just like that, I was on the show. And when I got on the show, I had just gotten into a new relationship, and I was trying to, very insecure dude at the time. I'm not saying that I'm not now, but I wanted to stay in touch, and you were not allowed to stay in touch with people. They made you give up your cell phone. You couldn't make phone calls. Well, you could make phone calls, but they listened in, and it was very uncomfortable.
What was the point of that? Why couldn't you make a phone call?
Because they thought you were going to get, like, material.
No, please.
And I'm like, really?
Yeah.
I'm like, come on.
I've been doing this for 10 years.
So they wound up putting us all in a hotel, and then they moved us to the final location, which was the Queen Mary in Long Beach. And I live in Long Beach.
Yeah.
So I'm like, really? And then as soon as we get there, they're telling us, okay, they're going to take your cell phones. They're going to go through your luggage. Like, seriously, like checking into prison. Like, we're just going to strip you. You're only going to have, this, and that, but no technology. There's going to be cameras in the room. There's going to be they wanted to constantly watch you. And so I brought in 2 dummy phones.
Oh, my.
Yeah. Well, I brought in a dummy phone and I brought 2 live phones. And then I brought in like $3K in cash so I could grease whoever I needed to grease. Because, cash works.
It always does, doesn't it?
So what I wound up doing was once I was on the ship, they went through my luggage and they took the initial cell phone that they thought was my cell phone. It was the dummy phone. And then they put it in a bag and you'll get this back at the end of the show. Okay, all right. And then once I was in the room, I would go in the bathroom and I just pull out the cell phone and I was making all my phone calls from the
bathroom.
For the bathroom.
And they caught you.
The cameraman actually caught me. There wasn't like cameras that were in the room. I'm on my phone and I had a pillow on my lap, and I guess they saw me and they're like, "Gabe, what do you got there?" And I'm like, I got busted. And so once I had the phone out, they're like, they called all the producers in, and Gabe's got a phone and this and this and that, and they're like, "Man, really?" And so they were supposed to kick me off right then and there, but they wound up letting me stay for an extra 3-4 days because they still had a roast that they needed to do. And the roast was about me. And so they wanted to make sure they could finish all the shooting that week. And then all of a sudden the NBC executives are like, no, this is it. You got to go. And so they did this whole, deportation thing of the boat. I call it deportation because I was the only brown one to get kicked off the boat. And so
did you have to show your green card and everything?
Yeah, I get kicked off the boat. And it was like, all right.
Unbelievable.
But,
do that. A lot of difference it made in your career, right?
But it's one of those things, too, where I don't think anybody who ever won the show, just like America's Got Talent or any of these other shows, it's like, not America, I'm thinking American Idol. It's always the people that get kicked off early that wind up getting contracts for these, big deals.
You don't want to win. You want to come in second or third,
And so unless you're someone like a Kelly Clarkson who's going to freaking, really blow up, then it's kind of one of those like,
Name one winner of The Voice.
Yeah, exactly.
It just always makes me laugh. Talk to me about Frankie.
My son.
Yes.
Yes.
How old is he now?
My son Frankie is now 25 years old.
No, I didn't realize he was that old.
I know, right?
Because I've been listening to routines about him for so long.
He grew up in my set.
Wow.
He grew up in my set. Yeah, he's 25 now.
What's he doing?
He says his exact words are, he's a freelancer. And I'm like,
what does that mean?
I go, what does that mean? He goes, you don't know what a freelancer is? I go, I know what I think a freelancer is, but I want to hear your version of it.
It's like being an entrepreneur. What does that mean?
Yeah.
So he's working, but we just don't know what he's doing.
Thank you. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, I'll stop asking questions. I'm just like, as long as you're happy, and I could tell based on whether he asks for money or not if he's doing okay. And he doesn't ask for money anymore. So I'm like, you know what? I think he's doing okay.
All right. Let's talk about Dodger Stadium. No person in your world has ever sold out Dodger Stadium doing stand-up comedy. Was this a dream?
No, well, no one's ever even tried it, which is a big thing.
Why would you?
Yeah, no, this was not a dream. For me, I growing up, I remember watching Andrew Dice Clay, and I remember seeing that Andrew Dice Clay was the only comedian to ever perform in an arena where it was like publicized, televised. Because I heard that there was other comics that had played arenas, but like Steve Martin. But it's like you have to really know the game to find out that something like that took place. But with Dice, I mean, HBO was blowing comics up way back when, and Andrew Dice Clay was the one that you saw at Madison Square Garden. And I just remember the images of him standing in the round and having that whole crowd around, and I'm like, wow, how awesome would that be? But I never thought that that was something that I could do. I just thought that was awesome that he did it. And so once the career started, and at the clubs, and then opener, feature, and then headliner with bonuses. Because once you started selling tickets, you'd get bonuses. And I'm like, ooh. And so the bonuses started getting better and better. And then they want to add shows. And then next thing you know, the manager's like, hey, look, man, we're doing 2 weeks back to back. I think we can make the jump to theaters. And I'm like, oh, let's not ruin a good thing. Because I hated change. And I didn't want to grow out of that because I love the club so much. But then he was right. One night at the theater was 2 weeks at the club. And so then we were able to do 2, 3, 4 theaters in a week. And the money and the amount of people that I was exposed to was just boom, boom. It kept growing.
Yep.
And then, hey man, we're doing 4 theaters in a row in the same city. Next time we're gonna do an arena. What? And so the first time I played an arena was the Toyota Center in Houston, Texas.
Isn't that mind-boggling when you walk out on that stage, and they say, "Ladies and gentlemen,"
And it's that sound that you always hear in the movies.
yes,
You know, that, like really,
but it's for you.
Yeah, but you're wondering, is it really going to sound like that? And it does.
It does.
It does. It just.
How did it affect your timing?
The timing in the beginning, it did throw me off because I was not used to it, and then a laugh would take a minute versus just taking a few seconds, and so. With time, you do get better and you adjust. You learn how to adjust. And then if you go to for me, I'd mess myself up because I'd go to a comedy club one night and then the next night at an arena, and then the timing between the two is insane.
Well, just the use of the microphone is different.
Yeah. Just the acoustics and everything. And so it did take some adjusting.
So was it 50,000 people at Dodger Stadium?
It was a little over 50,000. Yes, it was.
And you did how much time?
What actually aired on Netflix was 2 hours.
But I heard you did closer to 4.
Yeah, I did. Well, it was about 3.
I mean, I don't know. How do you remember all that material?
And then it was a little, about half hour of celebrating. I remember at the end of the night, I wound up popping a bottle on stage in front of that whole crowd, and no one cared because I'm like, if you're ever gonna get drunk and celebrate, that's the night to do it.
Hell yeah.
And everyone, from what I could see, everyone stayed to watch this. And I brought my friends out on stage, and we just started doing shots and sharing stories. And some of those stories made it to the end credits of the special, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yep.
But I didn't think that was gonna. I knew I was gonna get emotional, but I think I was crying like every about 20 minutes. I'd get all choked up, and so it was so much. It was so overwhelming, and the timing on that, believe it or not, was probably the same as performing at an arena.
Oh, I would imagine. Yeah, absolutely. Here's the key word that folks like you and I love, merch. Okay? They don't tell you about this when you're coming up doing 5 minutes at the Comedy Store on a Monday night. And I got a chance in my career to interview George Carlin, and he said he made more money off of merchandise than he ever made off of ticket sales. And then fast forward the tape, I got into the Nickelodeon merch, and now tell me about your merch at Dodger Stadium.
Oh, well, the merchandise, I caught on early. I'm a big fan of WWE, in particular Vince McMahon and the way that he ran his business, the entertainment part and the merchandise and the way that he would package things. And that's what I started doing. I would actually have merchandise that was promoted during my set. So I'd have my MC go out there, Martine, and he'd say, hey, don't forget, especially on the big shows, we'd always have intermissions. Hey, here's your chance to go to the restroom, but while you're out there, we got this. And we'd write bits for all the merch. So each piece of merchandise had its own bit to it to get laughs.
Very smart.
And, of course, we promote. Back in the day, it was CDs, DVDs, T-shirts. But then we got into specialty items, and then I wound up becoming a Funko Pop. We were trying to get Funko to license me. Just give me a check, license it.
Yeah.
And they didn't want to do it because they didn't have a comedy edition.
Right.
They had the icons, television icons. They had wrestlers. They had musicians, but they didn't have comedians. And so we tried, and they said, well, unfortunately, we know you are, but we don't have a comedy division, basically. And so I said, well, can I be the first? And they're like, well, we don't want to license you, but if you're willing to, we'll produce it for you, but you have to order so many units, and we won't take you into consideration unless you order so many units. And I'm like, done. And they're like, oh, shoot. And so I ordered, it was basically a semi's worth of Funko Pops, and we sold them out.
Oh, I bet you did.
We sold them out, and then we called them and we ordered more. And they're like, you want more? We're like, yes, we want more. And then the conversation was like, well, do you want to do another one? I go, I'd love to do another one.
Yeah.
And so then we did a second one, and then here comes another semi. And what was cool is that my Funko Pop has a number 1 on it because it's the first one, and my second one has a number 2 because I was the first and the second.
Oh, nice.
And then other comics started seeing what was going on, and then Jeff Dunham jumped into the thing.
Oh, Dunham did?
And Joe Coy, and so then they started getting into the mix. But by then, I already had a couple Funko Pops in the can.
I love it.
And so those became very popular. I would sell them by themselves, and then I would sell them for a different price point once they were autographed.
Well, the hot sauce thing, too, is very cool.
Oh, and yeah, that's another thing, too. I got a good relationship with the Tapatio family.
Yeah.
And they put my face on a bottle.
Which was
hysterical. Awesome and very organic, because the running story from many years ago was that my father was the Tapatio man.
Really?
Because my father was a real mariachi.
Oh, I didn't know that.
But because he was an absent father, when I tell my mom, what does my dad look like? Do you have any pictures? She'd grab the hot sauce bottle and she'd go, he looks like that. And she would just
Seriously?
point, yeah, he looks like that. And if you look at pictures of my dad, he looks like the Tapatio guy. And so that was the running joke.
Oh,
And the
my
family
God.
had seen that bit. And so they were like, oh, yeah, you've been a fan for a long time. And I actually eat the hot sauce, so it's not like it wasn't forced.
Saying one thing and
It was very organic.
not delivering.
So yeah, to answer the question, the merch for Dodger Stadium was insane. We
had to
had
be
two
great.
different Funko Pops and we had two different hot sauces. It was insane.
It's nice.
It was insane.
I used to make Nickelodeon back in the day. You know, you make the T-shirts for $5 and sell them for $25 back in the day. I don't know, God knows what they are now. But I always felt bad that kids would come and want something, so I made them sell like $2 shoelaces that said Double Dare on them or something like that, because I wanted everybody to be able to walk away with something.
Something.
And if you couldn't afford it back in the day, $15, $20, $25, you bring two kids, it gets expensive. So it's such a crazy business. Doing stand-up, I'm glad I haven't done stand-up in a long time. But, I see things on social media where they are throwing things at comedians now if they disagree with their point of view. Has that ever happened to you where you've been on stage and something weird like that has happened?
Throwing things like heckling or throwing things on stage? Or
I was watching a girl the other day. Somebody threw a beer can at her while she was doing her act because they didn't like her point of view. She was talking something about politics.
she mentioned Trump and then a beer can flew at her.
Yeah. So you saw that. But also hecklers. I mean, have you had problems with people?
A week prior to Dave Chappelle's incident at the Hollywood Bowl, I was in Seattle at a casino, and during my set, this guy in the crowd runs up and jumps over the barricade and lands on the stage. It wasn't a success. It was successful in the part that he made it to the stage, but he landed on his face. It was a splat.
Oh man!
It was a splat, and when he hit the ground, I remember seeing car keys flying out of his hand and 2 bags of chips. And then by then, security had gotten on the stage, grabbed him, and pulled him off the stage. And so, I saw that they were pulling him to the side, and I said, "Hey guys," I go, "Hey, just be careful." Just I was very mindful, and I'm all about. I always hear this word in my head because of my business manager, liabilities.
Yes.
And so I'm always, "Hey, be careful. Make sure he's okay. You're all right. What's going on, buddy? You good?" And his whole thing was he just wanted to bring me those snacks.
Oh, really?
That's what his story was, and the guy was drunk.
Yeah.
So when he hit the ground, and the fact that a knife or a gun didn't fly out of his hands,
that's the good news.
2 bags of chips.
Yeah.
So his story did line up.
Yeah.
But then again, there was car keys. He could have given me a car. I don't know, but
You don't need a car.
He had done that, and I remember I grabbed the bags of chips and I put them on a stool, and at the end I just opened up the bags and I go, "Here's for the homie that didn't make it," because they escorted him out. So the homie that couldn't be here, thank you. And I found out later on that they let him sober up and got him out of there.
Wow, just crazy.
But stuff like that has happened. As far as heckling goes, anytime I get heckles now at the shows, these are people that have paid good money to see the show, and so the heckling I get is very positive, if that makes sense. So there's a lot of "I love you," or "My son loves you," or something where there's very positive. Or they'll request a joke. They'll say, "Hey,
Really?
do that one joke." And, do that bit. And I'm like, okay, because there are points in the show where I'll get quiet for a second and I'll think about what I'm saying, because it's been over like an hour and a half or 2 hours. And after 2 hours, I'm like, what? Did I already say that?
Yeah.
Did I already do that? And so I'll have these little pauses, or I'll pause to grab a drink real quick. I go, "Do you guys mind if I grab a soda?" And I'll open up an ice chest. And while I'm doing that, I'll start getting people yelling stuff out. But it's not to the point where I can't recover from it, or I can't go back and forth. Sometimes I'll have people that are just being loud in the room. They're talking to somebody next to them and they're just like, "Yeah, blah, blah, blah." And then the whole room could hear it. I'm like, "Hey, you guys, we can all hear you, right?"
Yeah.
So I get disturbances like that, or I'll get people that are just walking around and they're wearing something bright and they can't find their seat, or something random is happening.
How odd.
But fortunately, it has nothing to do with politics. It has nothing to do with,
religion or anything like that.
None of that.
Yeah, which
so
is
I
good.
don't have those heated combos, and I don't open myself up to problems, because as soon as you start arguing, phones come out, and
Yeah,
the
everybody's taking
argument
pictures.
the argument always starts when they don't hear what triggered you to begin with. They just see you getting mad.
Yeah.
And then they're like, "Well, here's Gabriel Iglesias getting mad."
Yeah.
And they don't see what led to that. It just, here's where it starts.
Social media.
It opens up with, you motherfucker. Like Fluffy hates his fans. It's like, wow, what happened?
So when you think about the guy who was, couch surfing and losing his job and selling cell phones, and Polestar says you're the number 2 touring comedian in the country, you earned that. But what do you think about that?
This past year, the 2 big things that really stood out, one of them, of course, was Dodger Stadium, biggest thing I've ever done. And the second one actually happened this past month. I went to go watch Dave Chappelle and Chris Rock. They're doing this tour together.
I was going to ask you about that. There's a picture, and you said you're definitely keeping that one.
Yeah.
Tell me about that story.
So I see that they're performing at the Honda Center, which that's the closest show to L.A.
Yep.
But for me, it works out because I live in Long Beach, and it's about 15 minutes away. So I see they're doing the show, and I look online to see about getting tickets for this because there's very few shows very few comedians I'm willing to pay to see, but I'm willing to pay to watch these 2 legends.
Sure.
And so once you go online, Ticketmaster is just giving you a big middle finger because they're like, really, you're going to try to get tickets for this? It's been sold out.
Well, you know people, don't you?
Then I went to Plan B, but I did try to do it the right way first.
I admire that.
So I call my manager, and my manager calls the promoter. Their promoter is the same promoter I used for Dodger Stadium.
Oh, nice.
A guy named Jeff. And so we reach out, and he calls back, and he's like, look, the show's sold out, but they'll put you in the Live Nation suite at the Honda Center. And I'm like, great. So I was able to bring a few friends with me. We go to the Honda Center, and it was just an epic night. So
Had to be.
I didn't want to worry about parking because I know parking can be a drag there. So unless I'm parking underground for a show, I don't want to get in the mix with parking. No. So we got a car service. And sure enough, trying to get off the freeway, it was a mess. It was a mess and a half trying to get off that freeway. And so we're calling security because security wants us to let them know when we get there. Security winds up sending out a police officer to find us in the line.
Come on.
And then they pulled us out of the line, and they did a police escort from basically the back of the line all the way to the back door.
Way cool.
Which was super cool.
I bet.
I was like, wow. And then cars are just moving out of the way. We're yelling out the window, that's right. We're parting this bitch. It was so cool. So then we get out of the car, and then, of course, they escort us to the security. You take all your stuff out your pockets, go to the metal detectors. Chris and Dave have this policy where you got to put your phone in a bag to protect the thing.
Yep.
And security was so geeked out that I was standing there. No one asked me for my phone. So I'm like, hey, yeah, it's a good show, huh? And I just walked right past him. And so I think I was the only one that made it into that building without having to bag his phone. But it's not like I was there to record. So we wind up going through the concourse. They get us to the suite. And then the promoter walks in and he goes, hey, man, Dave and Chris, they're excited you're here. I go, just shut up. And I know this promoter. A lot of times he's full of it.
Yeah, they all are.
He goes... he goes, yeah, man, they're excited you're here. Like, yeah, whatever. So he goes, hey, here's some backstage passes after the show. Come on back. I'm like, all right, cool. So then they left a security guard in there for me. And when Dave Chappelle had 10 minutes left on his set, the security officer comes over to me and he's like, Mr. Iglesias, we should leave right now before it gets crazy. I'm like, yeah, let's go. So then we go down to the floor. We were in the suite. Now we're on the floor level. And the guy tells me, he says, do you want to watch the last few minutes of Mr. Chappelle from the tunnel? And so I'm like, yeah. So I get to go into the tunnel, which is basically the tunnel where hockey players come out or basketball players, whenever the artist or whatever come out of the tunnel. Mm-hmm. And so I'm standing there and I'm watching Chappelle. It's he's performing in the round and he does his thing, finishes, thank you, good night. And then I hear on one of the security officers' radios, I hear, there's someone standing in the tunnel. There's someone standing in the tunnel. I'm like, oh, shit, that's me. So I'm trying to get out of the way. And
oh, my God.
They take me backstage and I'm just waiting in the hallway, and there's a bunch of heavy hitters there. So I see like Stan Latham, who's a big name in comedy, directed a bunch of things. And I see Ashton Kutcher, Tony Hawk, Mos Def, and all these artists are heading back to the special room in the back, and I'm just waiting in the hallway. And the promoter, Jeff, comes out, and he goes, hey, man, they're waiting for you. I'm like, really, they're waiting for me? I just saw who walked in there. And next thing I know, we walk in, and I see a bunch of photographers, and they're taking pictures of Chris Rock and Ashton Kutcher. And I'm just watching, and then Chris stops, and he looks at me, and he's like, "Ah, shit! Look who it is!" He lets go of Ashton, and he comes over to me, and he's hugging me. He's like, "What the hell you doing, man? You should have told us you were here." and I'm just like, Chris, I just wanted to come and support you guys and watch you, come see you. He's like, "Nah, man, it's your town. You need to check in." I'm like, I didn't know I needed to check in, but I will check in the future. And so next thing I know, we go to Chappelle's room, and that just looked like a sketch from one of his shows.
Really?
The room's dark. There's red lights and smoke coming out of the room.
No.
Yes. And the red lights were because he has red lights in the room to create this vibe, and the smoke is from various locations.
Yeah.
And then so Chappelle comes up and he comes up and he's like, "Hey man," and gave me a hug. And Chris and Dave were both talking to each other and they're like, "We told him." They're like, "You should have been up there." And they kept telling me I should have been up there.
Oh my.
And for me, that just like it blew my mind. And then Dave goes, "Can we take a picture?" I'm like, "Yeah, let's take a picture."
Oh my.
And then he goes, "Can I put this picture in my special?" And I said, "Did you just?" "Yeah."
Yeah.
I go,
Hell yeah.
What do I owe you?"
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
And I'm just like, I can't believe that this conversation is taking place and that I'm getting this much attention
That's way cool.
from the two of them, being that there's so many people in the room.
Yeah. But you do what they do.
And you know
They
what?
get it.
I had spoken to both one time prior to that. I was, I just met them. It wasn't even like we hung out. And for me, that was massive because I've been telling everybody, I said, I walked into that building a fan. And when I walked out a peer. And that for me was bigger than any trophy, bigger than any, Polestar thing. But thank you, Polestar.
Yeah. But you meet your, sometimes it's not great to meet your heroes. And then when you do, and they treat you as they did.
That was one of the most amazing experiences because I left on such a high. Both of them were beyond nice, gracious, just like the respect and I had no idea. It's like you do what you do, and when you meet somebody that's in the same world, and you wonder how, because for me, I was willing to come out and pay to see them. My respect is there. I love these guys. They're legends. They're awesome. So the fact that they would give me their time the way that they did, I was just, maybe I didn't think enough of myself, but I was just kind of like, wow, this is amazing.
That's exciting.
And then the next day I got burglarized. So
No.
that's how life works.
Did you really?
Yes.
Your house?
They broke into my house. I was like on such a high that I
Oh
get this
my
phone call.
God.
Yeah, hey man, your shit's missing. I'm like, what?
Did they get a lot of stuff?
No, but the fact that they broke into my house, you know what they took? They took my guns.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, I had guns, and so I don't really put that out there that I'm a gun carrier, or was.
Yeah, they got them all now.
But
Wow.
I bought the guns when when COVID first hit because I went to the store and the guy sold me on it. He's like, "Yeah, man, the zombies and everybody's coming and the vaccine's gonna turn everybody and you got to be ready." And so I had multiple handguns and I bought enough ammo because then he kept saying the ammo's on sale right now. You better get it while it's on sale.
Oh my God.
Once you start shooting, man, he's just gonna.
So somebody knew you had that stuff there. It sounds like to me.
It was a nice house and I think that they had been casing it, but that's all they took.
Wow, that's interesting.
Everything in the house, and all they took was the guns.
And no security? I got to think you got security at the house, right? Don't you?
Multiple cameras. We got the whole thing. Like I got a,
Wow.
it was documented very well. The police were like, "Thank you for all this footage."
We'll never find these people.
Yeah,
but,
right.
Oh my God.
And I even had a fence, and so that automatically I knew it was two 20-year-olds that did it because they scaled the fence.
Good God.
I told everyone, I go, if it was two 40-year-olds with a messed up sciatica, they would have seen that fence and they would have been like,
Yeah, we ain't doing
"Yeah,
this.
we ain't doing this. We ain't doing this. Hit the neighbor."
So I have a Chihuahua, and I know you're a Chihuahua freak, quite honestly. You've got great dogs. Tell me about this Quencensera that you just spent
God.
$100,000 on. Is that a true number?
Believe it or not, it's actually way more. It's way more.
What did you do? Explain to the folks who are listening if they don't know what that is.
First of all, I have two Chihuahuas. A pet lover, dog lover, whatever you want to call it. And my little girl dog, Risa, she's between 16 and 17 years old. She's very old. And I had seen on TikTok there was a guy that threw a quinceañera for his Chihuahua in Mexico. Now, quinceañera is basically a Mexican sweet 16, but
Yeah.
it's 15.
It's like a bar mitzvah.
Coming of age. It's the celebration. It's the next chapter, and And so I saw this guy throw a party for his dog, and he's bringing the dog out in a pillow. Everyone's dressed up really nice. It was a legit. It almost looked like a wedding.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing that video, and I was like, ooh. I go, there's no way that guy loves his dog as much as I love mine. And I says, you know what? I was going to throw myself a party to celebrate the Dodger Stadium thing. And I says, well, I didn't because I just went back to work. So I says, you know what? That party I was going to throw for me, I'm going to make it about my dog. And so I did. And I went all out.
Where was that?
I went all out. It was at my building in Long Beach. And so
you wear long pants. I'd never seen you in long pants.
I know, right? That's how legit I took it. That's how serious I took it. It was serious. We had some like Cirque du Soleil performers. We had DJs, a band. There was a dog show.
No.
Like this guy Christian and Scooby from Vegas. The guy comes out with his chihuahuas and he balances them on his feet. He makes the dogs ride basketballs, and I mean it's a whole
That's
show.
hysterical.
There's a dance floor. We had dancing robots. We had so much food. I mean, it was insane. The amount of food and drinks, and everybody had such a good time.
You got great publicity on that thing.
Here's the thing is that I wasn't trying to do that. The plan was, and then I told everybody who attended the party, I said, hey, look, this isn't about me. This is about my dog. Please do not record me. Okay? Do not record me. You could take all the pictures, all the video you want. Do not record me or tag me. And one person did it. They recorded me when I was pushing the dog stroller, which is the video everybody saw. And they wound up posting it on TikTok. And then I got a phone call that, hey, Gabe, have you seen that video? It's got like 1 million views. And I'm like, what?
1 million views.
So I'm like, at that point, the cat's out of the bag. So I says, you know what? I'm not going to let somebody else capitalize on this. Let me do it. So then I posted it all over my social media, and it wound up getting like 5 million views.
Oh, yeah. It was everywhere.
And next thing I know, freaking People Magazine's talking about it. Today's Show's talking about it. It made its rounds.
It was fantastic.
And
I loved it.
For me, like, I got a lot of positive feedback, but then I also got people that were like, really? You're going to do that for a dog? And I'm like,
you can't win.
You can't win them all.
No.
And of course, there were some people that were just beating me up, and they're like, there's starving children in this world, right? And I'm like, oh God. And I'm like, they should have been at my party. Everyone ate. Everyone left with Tupperware. It was really, it was cool. We had Tupperware.
Tell me about your car collection. How'd that happen?
Car collection. I have basically a Volkswagen museum. I have a bunch of pre-1967 Volkswagen buses and a couple of bugs, but my passion is the buses. That got started through Jay Leno.
Really?
Yeah, that's why I tell everybody I have a Jay Leno starter kit at home because I was hanging out with Jay, and Jay started asking me questions about what I was doing with money because he knew that things were going well, and he's like, how you investing your money? You're doing good with the money.
How you doing?
That's funny. I love it. Your impression is a little bit worse than mine. So.
Well, we all do Jay, and we all do Mitzi Shore.
There's a guy right there.
Mark, there's nothing else I can do for you.
He's so funny. Call Paulie. Yeah, we all
Luckiest man in show business.
So yeah, Jay told me that he says, hey man, I have all these cars, and he goes, this is also my investment. He goes, it's like I enjoy my investment. When you buy into classic cars, when you get to enjoy it, and if you decide to sell it, you can actually make money on it. And I don't think Jay's ever sold one of his cars, but that's just what he said.
Yeah.
And so I had gotten my ex-girlfriend back her car. She used to drive a Trans Am, and I got her car back. And Jay's guys were like, hey, if you ever want another car, let me know. And I said, well, I'd like to see about getting a Volkswagen bus. And I told them the year, and less than a day later, they had a car lined up for me.
Really?
And so they delivered it, and they said, if you want anything else, let us know. And I said, well, if you come across another one of these, let me know. And we played that game for about a year. And I built a collection of about 20 cars in a year.
Good God.
And then I met somebody that does restorations. I met someone that does all the engine work. And so then I got everybody on the same team. And now it's like you make a phone call and I want to order a bus a certain way, and it gets all done.
Do you drive them?
Yes.
And I heard there's going to be a museum at some point. Is that true?
The idea is once I'm long gone, I'm working on Mexican Graceland right now. So I can just leave all the cars behind, and so there's a bunch of cars. There's a gym that hardly gets used there. There's my I have a studio like for recordings and stuff like that, and I have a conference room with a bunch of pictures. There's a ton of photos all over the walls, and so it looks really cool. It already looks like a museum.
That's cool.
But the city, getting the city on board for one thing, and I think it's one of those like I said, once I check out, so people can come and visit, I'll leave the ashes there.
Wow. Think about that for a second. Let's talk about that. You opened up a door here. And tell me, I always like to do research. At one point, you were dealing with depression and alcoholism. True story?
Well, I come to find out it wasn't alcoholism because I guess you got to be drinking every day to be considered an alcoholic. Mm-hmm. I think it was just excess because based on ounces, I guess I could be classified as an alcoholic. But the fact that it was all taking place on one day means I'm not. It was just, I would just get a little carried away from time to time.
Hey, we've all done that.
As far as the depression goes, I think it had a lot to do with balancing my life because, I had this road life as a comic and then the home life and then trying to make the two work. And one makes you really, really happy and the other one, has a lot of questions. So trying to...
The word sacrifice comes into mind.
Yes. There is a lot of sacrifice and... I can't say that it was 100% work that I was, doing while I was gone. But at the same time, when I first got into the relationship, she knew what I did for a living.
Yeah.
She and it was understood that, hey, this is only going up right now. It's not going down. And so if you're willing to, go on this ride, just know that it's going to get crazier every year. And it was every single year, just more. There were more dates, more opportunities, more money. And with all of that comes more problems.
Yeah.
And so eventually it wound up taking its toll. I found my own ways of dealing with things. And unfortunately, it wasn't the best way of dealing with things. And then, of course, then you're like reflecting on it. And that's when there's issues with drinking or whatever else you get into. And, fortunately, a couple years of not doing anything got me into a better place. And I started seeing a therapist. And I'm like, that's another milestone for me was once I got a therapist, and I was able to afford it. I told people that's when you know you're successful, when you can afford a therapist and not flinch when they give you that invoice. Because before I would deal with my issues with a bottle of tequila and tears.
Yeah.
Put on some mariachi music and all right, whatever you say is whatever you say, and then when they judge you, you go, it was the bottle talking. That was always your scapegoat.
Yeah, yeah. Now, I haven't seen you in about 4 years. Last time we granted each other.
Yeah, you pie to the face.
Exactly. You look in pretty good shape overall.
Thank you. It's genes. They help. I'm standing up straight.
I'm going to mention some names here, and just give me at your highest point, you were what, 445 pounds is what I read?
I was rough, yeah. 437 was my max.
At 437, okay. So type 2 diabetes, and they gave you a couple of years to live.
But I think that's, in hindsight, I think that's a lot of doctors are just going to, tell you that out the gate.
Yeah.
That's been about 10 years now.
Okay.
So the couple's been a decade now, so he was off. But then again, I did make some adjustments.
When you think of Chris Farley, what comes to mind?
Wow, very funny, very talented. He was very animated. The guy was very physical. He was like, he reminds me of John Ritter back in the day. John Ritter was a very physical performer.
Yep.
And the fact that he carried the weight that he did and he was able to do what he did was incredible. And unfortunately, he got caught up.
Yep. That was drugs.
Yeah.
Chris Farley.
It was a lot of expectation too. You become the guy at the party where
everybody has expectations.
Yes.
And you get caught up into that. John Candy.
John Candy, super funny. Honestly, a great actor. He was a great actor. There was no part that I felt like it was like it didn't fit him. He could play serious. He could be funny. He could just, do a combination of the two. I felt like Uncle Buck was one of those films that it was a nice, you could see into his soul. And it was awesome to see wow, this is beautiful. They asked me to see if I was interested in doing a reboot of it.
Really?
And I said, there's no way I could do that part justice. And I'm not about to have people try to compare us.
Yeah.
And nor do I want to be part of that conversation.
You got to learn when to say no.
Yeah.
And that was a wise choice, I think.
Yeah. No,
I don't know anybody who could.
I ain't trying.
John Panette.
John Panette. I actually got to meet John Panette a couple of times. Very
Funniest.
Nice.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
very nice.
Yeah.
He was very, very nice. Very funny. He got really, really heavy, and then he lost a ton of weight. And unfortunately, I think it was just too late at that point. The damage was done. Everybody you mentioned, definitely over 400 pounds.
Ralphie May?
Yeah, another one. I knew Ralphie very well. Very, very well. He was super funny. Unfortunately, in the last couple of years, between the divorce and all that, that really took a lot of, big toll.
Yeah.
It took a big toll on him. I also knew, he liked to smoke weed a lot. And when you're that heavy, I mean, don't get me wrong. I had my little run with it, and from time to time, I want to go to sleep, hungry. So I'll do it, but it's not a regular thing. Plus, I rely on my voice a lot. So you smoke or you get any smoke in there, you're gonna be raspy, and it's not gonna work for me.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know this, that Ralphie was vegan.
I never knew that.
Or not vegan. He was vegetarian. He was
Okay, but
vegetarian.
still.
Vegetarian. It was so funny because I picked him up when he flew from Houston to L.A. to move here. And I picked him up at the airport, and I was telling everybody, I go, Ralphie May's coming to town. I'm going to pick him up. I'm going to take him to this badass steakhouse. It's going to be incredible. And so I pick him up at the airport, and he gets in the car. And this is when I was driving the Oldsmobile. And so it was a perfect car, big old front seat. So he gets in the car, and what's up, Big Daddy? How you doing, man? I go, Ralphie, I'm going to take you to this badass steakhouse. You're going to love it. And he goes, Daddy, I didn't mention it, but I'm vegetarian. I go, shut up. I'm vegetarian. I go, dude, what do you eat? Crops? And he fell out. He goes, ah! So,
Oh my
and
God.
what's funny is that Ralphie used to love to do barbecues. He'd have people come over his house, and he knew how to barbecue really well.
But he didn't eat it.
He didn't eat it.
I had no idea.
Yeah, and so I was just like, okay. But
Panette's
super,
routine,
super nice guy.
Panette's routine about going to a Chinese restaurant was just one of my
You
favorite.
go now.
You go
You
now.
here for hour.
Yeah, 4 hours.
You here for hour.
It was the
You
best.
eat the vegetable. It was hysterical. I don't know if you can do that bit now.
You don't think so? Yeah, you know what you say. You can't do anything anymore,
Yeah,
man.
I
It's
can't-
unbelievable. So a lot of people love you, okay? And the guy sitting across from you loves you. And I guess the question I have to ask you, and it's a tough one, is you know, how often do you think about your weight? How often do you? I mean, it's got to be in your
Every
head.
day.
Every day.
Every day. In my room, I have in my bathroom, I have a scale. It's right next to my urinal. I actually had a urinal installed. By the way,
you really?
Yeah. Oh, heck yeah. Heck yeah. I had wanted a urinal for forever.
Why?
Just because, dude, you're a guy. Come on,
I'm a guy, yeah.
Yeah, because it's convenient. You're standing there. You know, I'm a leaner, so when I'm you know,
TMI.
hey man, you asked. So I had always wanted a urinal in the bathroom, and my ex was like, "This is not a truck stop. You're not putting no urinal in here." I'm like, "Fine." And, you know, there's the mop. You know, because I'm a big dude. So anyway, once I finally got into a place where I could do it, I had a urinal
That's
installed,
hysterical.
and next to the urinal I have a scale. And so every morning I do weigh myself.
Really?
Every morning I weigh myself, and so it's always a thought in the back of my mind.
Yeah.
Because when I go to sleep or when I'm sitting in the car, when I'm over 400, I have a really bad issue with anxiety, and so the anxiety will kick in, and there comes a point where I can't even put on certain articles of clothing because I feel like I'm being constricted and I can't breathe right. Right now I'm comfortable, but I know I could be better. You know, and my weight has been lower in the last 10 years than it is now.
What's the lowest it's been?
Let me see. I got down to 317.
And what are you at now?
Right now, 351.
What's your favorite food?
Ooh. Man, a lot of things come to mind right now.
See, pizza, instantaneous.
Well, I love cheese. I'm big on cheese, and so my favorite thing is just a plain cheese quesadilla. Just very
go wrong.
basic. You know, I grew up on those. So my mom would
Yeah.
make just 3 pieces of cheese, tortilla, fold it, microwave, 1 minute, I'm eating. And so I'm very simple that way.
Best burrito in town is.
I couldn't even tell you.
Really?
I couldn't even tell you.
You know, last week I'll name drop here some more. I went to Santa Anita with Bobby Flay and Jet Tila, and Jet Tila took me to a restaurant in Highland Park, where unless you knew what to order, you wouldn't know. And these people have had this restaurant for 25 years, and they put us in a private room, and it was lobster and rice and fish like I've never had in my entire life. And I said, Jet, if I would come to your house, is this what I'd be having? He goes, absolutely. And so to be in the presence of chefs like that who serve food that is so good and so different and so unique, and you go, boy, that's like, it's one of the joys we get because we are who we are. We get to know who these people are and share in that.
And eat at restaurants that are like that. Because like now, my mental bar, I used to be able to just go to Sizzler and be like, this is the greatest ever.
Thank God you've moved
You know
on.
what? I can go to that salad bar all I want. You know, I could get salad or not.
Or not.
You know, they got the wings, they got meatballs and other things there. And then, you know, I'd order a little Malibu chicken. And that for me was the best. I go, it doesn't get better than Sizzler. And then you get introduced to places like a Mastro's or, you know, or Capitol Grill or, you know, some of these places. And you're like, wow.
It's amazing.
Even a Ruth Chris.
Yeah.
Ruth Chris is pretty awesome.
It's not bad. Are you a sushi guy? Not so much.
Not so much. I mean, I'll do anything tempura. So you tempura it, you know, the crunchy rolls, the dynamite shrimp.
I got to take you to Nobu then. Have you been to Nobu?
I've heard of Nobu.
Oh, okay. I'm taking
Yeah.
you.
No, actually, I did eat at Nobu in Spain.
In Spain?
Yeah, I was in Spain, and Nobu, I want to say, is also the name of the hotel.
Yes, absolutely. There's a Nobu hotel there.
Yeah,
Where were
and
you?
so
In
they had
Barcelona or where were you?
yes.
Yeah, okay.
And so, I know, right? Sounds
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
It's like, he was at Sizzler a minute ago. Oh, this guy travels fast. I get around. So, yeah, I got to eat at the Nobu there.
This has been more enjoyable than you'll ever know for me because I've never really had a chance to sit down and talk with you, and you're so interesting, and this has been such an easy conversation, and you're so giving, and you're so talented, and I just wish you all
Thank
the
you, Marc.
success in the world. Keep it going, my friend. Don't talk about checking out and doing museums afterwards. Enjoy your life now. Do the museum when you can watch other people enjoy it, and continued success.
Thank you very much.
Talking to Fluffy, Gabriel Iglesias, Marc Summers Unwrapped. See you next week. Marc Summers Unwraps is a production of Believe Limited, created by me, Marc Summers, and Jessica Richmond. Produced by Keith Corneluk and Jessica Richmond. Executive produced by Patrick James Lynch and Ryan Geelan. Post-production support from Joshua Sterling Bragg and Believe Limited. Don't forget to subscribe or follow the show on your favorite podcast player, and if you really love it, why don't you leave us a rating and a review? Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Marc Summers Unwraps.